What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the poker vlog. It is Saturday, August the 17th. It's about 12:25 in the afternoon, and I'm gonna go get some lunch. I think I'm gonna head over to my favorite taco place in all of Las Vegas, which is Tacos El Gordo. You may have heard of it. It's kind of a famous spot here in Las Vegas. They've got multiple locations. So I'm gonna go grab a couple of tacos over there, and then I'm gonna drive on up to Bellagio and jump into a 2-5 game. So that's the plan. I'll show you guys Tacos El Gordo. Again, some of you may not know about it. There are multiple locations across the valley here in Las Vegas. The one that I go to is right off of Sunset, and I will see you guys there at Tacos El Gordo. We take our seat, and pretty much right out of the gate we get dealt a playable hand. King Jack of diamonds on the button. Cutoff raises it to 20. I go ahead and call in position. Small blind puts in the 3-bet, but it's a rather small sizing. He makes it 60 to go. With two players in the pot, I would think he would size up a little bit here, trying to get this heads up, but he doesn't. He makes it 60 to go, and the cutoff pretty quickly calls. Now I'm getting a pretty decent price to see a flop here, so I didn't drive 30 minutes and deal with the parking hassles at Bellagio to fold a hand like King Jack of diamonds on the button. I put in the call, and we go three ways to a flop, which is 7-5-3 with two hearts. Small blind does not slow down and quickly fires out a bet of 70 here on this flop. Cutoff thinks that it's a pretty good price. He puts in the $70 call, and I don't think I have much of a choice here. I think I am going to have to go ahead and just fold King Jack of diamonds after all. Just to have two overcards and a dream is all I've got here. So I'm going to get out of there. I'm going to get out of the way and let these two fight over this pot. Minutes later, we look at pocket threes, also on the button once again. The action folds to me, and I raise it up. I make it 15 to go. Small blind folds, big blind calls, so we're going to go heads up here to a flop. Flop is a fairly wet, dynamic paired board. We see 8-7-8 with two clubs. Big blind starts things off with a check like I would expect him to pretty much 100% of the time, and I'm going to be firing out a continuation bet on this flop about 100% of the time as well. I make it 20 to go. Now, at first glance, this flop looks like it would connect with big blind's calling range pretty frequently. I would expect that he could possibly have hands like 9-8 suited. He could have some hands like 10-8 suited. But I think mostly the big blind is going to consist of some Broadway-type hands when he calls pre-flop. Probably hands like King-Queen, King-Jack, King-10, Queen-10, Queen-Jack. Those types of Broadway holdings are going to be a big chunk of the big blind's range. So I think we can represent hands like 9-8 suited, 8-7 suited. Even hands like 7-6 suited would be in my button open range. So I think this actually favors our opening range quite a bit. So I would expect that we're going to get folds quite often here when we c-bet. And fold is exactly what he does. He lets his hand go pretty quickly, and we take down a small little pot here with our pocket threes. But a win is a win. I will take it. Playing hands in position is a good thing, or at least that's what I've been told. I've got 10-9 of hearts. I'm on the button. It folds to me. I raise it up to 15. Small blind folds. Big blind calls. Pretty standard stuff here. Heads up to a flop in position. We pick up a little showdown value on the flop of King, Queen, 9, rainbow board, bottom pair. Big blind starts things off with a check in the dark, and I just decide to check back here with our showdown value. We go to a turn, which I think was a brick. It was like the 4 of clubs or something like that. Doesn't change anything, and the big blind checks again. I decide to just check and try to get to showdown with this hand. I don't really see much reason to bet into this board. Goes check, check on the river, and our 9 is going to win. We're going to take this one down. It turns out showdown value is a thing. This one gets a little bit more interesting. We've got King, Queen of hearts. This time we're in the cutoff, still in position, and we see a player from under the gun limp in. I raise things up to 20, and we end up getting a call by the big blind and the player in the under the gun spot who limped in. So we're going to go three ways here to a flop. I don't have much info on the under the gun player other than the fact that he'd been playing fairly tight, but the big blind had been playing a lot of hands, and I'd seen him show down with some fairly strange suited hands like 6-3 suited, 7-4 suited, things of that nature. So he's capable of calling pre-flop with any two suited cards. So when we see a flop of king, queen, 7, all diamonds, I definitely think there could be some danger out there, but we have top two pair, and when both players check to me, I think we definitely want a continuation bet here and start to build a pot. I make it 40 to go, and only the big blind calls. Under the gun quickly folds, and we go to a turn card, which is the 9 of clubs. Now is where this hand gets a little bit interesting. The big blind decides to donk bet on this turn and take over the betting lead. He settles on a sizing of $70. Now I'm in a kind of a crummy spot with my top two pair. I'm not really loving the situation. I have to ask myself, what range does the big blind check call flop and donk turn with? I think Jack 10 makes quite a bit of sense. He had an open-ended straight draw on the flop, gets there on the turn, decides to donk to charge any additional flush draws, like if I have the ace of diamonds or if I have the jack of diamonds or something of that nature. He wants to charge those types of hands. I think some of his baby flushes might take a line like this, like if he called pre-flop with a hand like 5-4 of diamonds or 9-8 of diamonds or something like that. He might take a line like this, doesn't want to see another diamond on the river, which would potentially slow down the action. So I think a lot of his made hands take this type of a line. He might be capable of doing this with a bluff with just the bare ace of diamonds. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's that type of player that would run this type of a bluff. But I feel like we basically just have a bluff catcher here in this spot at this point. So based on that assessment, I don't think we're going to be good here too often at the time, and I don't really want to pay this player off for flopping a flush, so I just go ahead and decide to let my hand go. Yes, I make a pretty tight fold here. I tell him I folded two pair, and he told me that he did have a flopped flush. Not sure I believe him, but we will never know. Folding the previous hand plays into the dynamic of this hand. We pick up pocket aces in the cutoff. Of course, I'm going to be raising up the best starting hand in poker. I make it 15 to go. We end up going heads up. Surprisingly, we only get called by the big blind. So we're going to go heads up to a flop in position with the numero uno pocket aces. Flop comes down queen 9-3 with two clubs. We've got some straight draws, some flush draws, all kinds of possibilities on a pretty wet board. Big blind pretty quickly checks it over to me. I fire out a standard continuation bet here of $20, and we pretty quickly get check raised here in this spot. That's right, the old check raise. He starts counting out the chips, and it looks like he's going to settle on a 3x sizing. He's counting out 60, 65, and then he adds another 20 more on top of that. He settles on a sizing of $80 here on the flop. Now, alarm bells should be going off in my head, but unfortunately they are not because I'm still on a little bit of tilt from folding my top two pair in the previous hand, which was only about maybe 20 minutes earlier. I should be thinking about number one, the player type. I've played with this gentleman once in the past. He plays fairly straightforward. I've never seen him get out of line or run any crazy bluffs of anything like that. So I don't think he would be doing this with too many straight draws or flush draws. Maybe some of his weaker flush draws he might decide to check raise, but certainly hands like ace jack of clubs, he probably would just call on the flop and evaluate on future streets. So when he raises here on this flop, I should be immediately thinking, what hands in his range is he doing this with? I doubt he's doing it with top pair hands. I think he would only do this with sets and two pairs. So hands like pocket nines, pocket threes, queen nine suited would make this type of a play on the flop. Based on that range assessment, I think we could just go ahead and fold flop here. Yes, it seems like a really, really tight fold, but I bet small on the flop to incentivize him to raise with all of his good hands and call with the weaker portion of his range. And he's telling me, he's announcing to the world that he's got a strong made hand. So I think we can just easily fold here on the flop. But as is usual, I talk myself into he could be doing this with top pair, he could be doing this with straight draws, with flush draws, and I think of a whole bunch of stuff that's in his range that probably isn't in his range. and it makes me decide to put in the call here on the flop. So we're going to head off to a turn card which doesn't change a thing. It is the deuce of hearts. So a complete brick on the turn doesn't change anything, and now the big blind decides to put in the over bet. He makes it $250 to go here on the turn. 250 into a pot of about 200. This puts me into the tank, and once again my mind starts going into places that it shouldn't, thinking of all the potential draws and bluffs that he could have in his range that I really just don't think he has. I think he pretty much is going to have sets and two pair here almost all the time in this spot. So I'm going to tell myself now in these spots in the future, just fold. Separates the winning players from the losing players being able to get away from big overpairs like this. But I end up taking the losing player route. I can't help myself. I don't feel like folding. I don't feel like calling. I feel like playing a big pot, and I think I might have the best hand. I announce all in and get snap called. Major punt here. We get shown the bad news when he turns over Queen 9 of Hearts. He pretty much was just telling me face up that he had two pair or a set. Unfortunately, I was just too stupid to listen to what he was saying, and we end up losing and getting stacked here with our pocket aces. Last hand of the session, we've got 9-7 of spades on the button. I started recording a little bit late here. One player limped in the pot in the hijack. I raise it up to 20. Big blind calls, and the player who limped in the hijack calls as well, and we go three ways to a flop of 10-3-9 with two hearts. Big blind starts things off with a check, and the player in the hijack checks as well, and I think multi-way here I can just go ahead and check with some showdown value, and we see the 4 of clubs on the turn. Checks around again on the turn, and we see a 10 peel off on the river. Now the big blind decides to pick up the betting lead. He fires out for 25. Action is back over to the player in the hijack, who goes into the tank for a bit here. It looks like she's contemplating a move. Maybe she was slow playing something. I don't know. She eventually does decide to just let it go, though, and the action is back over to me. And I'd love to say this was a genius call here on the river, but I'm just on tilt and I'm in no mood to fold, so I call. We get shown pocket 7s, and surprisingly our pair of 9s is good, and we take down a small pot here to end the session and end the night. Not a great session. We end up down quite a bit, but I think that could have been avoided, especially with the hand with pocket aces. Definitely could have gotten away from it had we evaluated ranges better. So I think the takeaway here is put your opponents on accurate ranges and then make decisions based on those ranges. And winning player folds in that spot and doesn't get stacked. So that's the takeaway here. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, please do all the YouTube things, and I will see you in the outro. All right, that's going to do it for episode 57. Not too many hands in this episode. I played for about 4.5 hours, and unfortunately the last 2 hours of the session I was extremely card dead. I only got maybe a couple playable hands, and those ended up just being raise, take it. So really nothing to show there. And sometimes that's just the way it is. You know, the poker games can be hit and miss, and the table was not that great. We ended up getting a table change, but the second table wasn't all that great. So, just not too many playable hands in this particular session. So hopefully in a future session we'll be able to make that up and get some interesting hands in. I'm on a bit of a downswing again. So I had a really good June and a really good July, and now, I had a really good May and a really good June, and part of July was good. But at the end of July, I started going into what I would say is a downswing. In the last 5 sessions that I've played have all been losing sessions, and I'm down about 6 buy-ins. So pretty significant downswing. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that around in upcoming episodes and start going on an upswing. That's what we all want to see. So that's going to do it for episode 57. I'll put the totals up here so you guys can see that. Not great, obviously, but it is what it is. When you get big hands that don't hold up, you end up in a kind of a situation where you're going to have some losing sessions. So I will see you all in episode 58. Do all the YouTube things, please. Please, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the notification bell. Share this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone who appreciates poker content. Share it with them so they can enjoy this and hopefully share it with their friends as well. I'll see you guys soon. Until then, good luck at the tables. Take care.